Hello, time for another game review from the Firebird budget range, and today I'm looking at a game released in the short-lived $2.99 Firebird range in 1987. It's Hyber Blob, not Hyper Blob, but Hyber Blob. Now this was nominated for me by Andrew Fisher, so I hope he's chosen a good one for me. Fairly uncommon game to find out there, although it's not particularly expensive when you do find a copy. My copy only cost me £1.99. So let's check out Hyber Blob. Here we have the front cover then, and as you can see it's the $2.99 what I'm calling Gold range, which partners up with the Silver Range. It came out in the same era as that. So you can see the nice sort of emblem at the top there, very fancy. Then it says Hyber Blob, not Hyper Blob, in the title, which is fairly straightforward, nothing too spectacular about that. Pretty nice image though of the blobs bouncing along a wall there, and the Firebird logo at the bottom. So nicely presented. Spine's just very plain black with the title Hyber Blob on it. And the back cover, pretty typical. We've got the two screenshots of the game, which look fairly bland at this point. And the description of the game says, Hyber Blobs, less intelligent than a bucket of sand, more frustrating than chicken pox. So moving inside, and the inside of the packaging is just like the Silver Range packaging. So you've got the list of games available in the range. You've got the mail order info, and you've got the instructions, which says Hyber Blob, copyright Sam Manthorpe. It's then got an overview of the game, which says the blob pods are on a pod school holiday to explore the deserted square planet of Cubos in the 27.5 dimension. The blob pods, however, have the intellectual capacity of a bag of oven chips, and you've got as much chance of guiding them around Cubos as directing lemmings through heavy traffic in a rush hour. As the pod minder, it's up to you to get them through because no one else will do it. And you've got the loading instructions, and then more detail about playing the game, which I'm not going to go into because it's quite comprehensive, but basically it does mention there's 100 square scapes to explore. That's presumably 100 levels. You start on the left hand side of the screen, bounce to the right, you've got to get them to the right hand side of the screen. Lots more information about how you move the cursor and create and remove blocks to trap the Hyber Blobs and get them to the exit basically. And then some controls at the bottom there, it's just joystick and a few keyboard controls. Okay, so here's the title screen of the game, and pretty impressive it is too. As you can see, it's got a high score table. It's also got a kind of a tracked mode like an arcade game would have, which you can see here. So it gives you a little overview of one of the levels, some indication of what you've got to do or what you've got to deal with. It's got a nice logo here, Hyber Blob by Sam, with the Firebird Presents at the top there, and the music, which is very nice as well, is by Steve Barrett, who also did the music for another Firebird game I did recently, which was Trojan Warrior, and he also did a lot of music for Codemasters, so pretty accomplished musician, doing a very nice tune on the title screen of this game. Some other nice touches, you might not be able to make it out, but bottom left you've got the copyright Firebird 1987 logo in a really small font, which I've not seen on many Commodore 64 games, so that's quite impressive. Just a small thing, but quite a cool thing I thought. As you can hear, the music's now changed into a different kind of music with a bit more sedate style to it. So enough of the title screen, which is very impressive. Another thing I want to mention though is you've also got the ability to put in passwords or screen names, as it says here, for any screens beyond the first 14, and also with the function keys F3 and F5 you can choose up to start up to level 14 as well. So that's a nice touch as well. If you play through the first few levels and you want to try something different, then you can do. So all very nice stuff with the presentation. Off to a good start, it's fair to say. But enough of that, let's get on and actually play the game. Okay, so here we go, starting with the first screen, which is fairly easy to get through. But what I'm going to do quickly is just... Oh, I messed that up a bit, but I'm just going to block these Hyber Blobs off a little bit, because basically I wanted to describe how the game works without having to worry too much about playing it. So some of them fell down this hole here, and they will die by falling through any holes that they come across. There's also blocks on later levels that will stop them, will kill them or cause them to get into some kind of trouble. So basically what you've got to do is let them, they spawn on the left hand side of the screen, you've got to let them get all the way across to the right hand side, without befalling any hazards, basically. So you do that by picking up these blocks with the cursor. You can pick up to 4 at once. I don't need 4 for this though, so I'm just going to put those 2 back again. Fill in any hazards and then basically just let them freely move through the level. So if I just put this here, for example, I'm probably going to run out of time, but I wanted to demonstrate how the game worked first and foremost anyway. So this will just kill me off and we'll then go and play again. So you can see they run out of time, but they would have eventually got to the right hand side of the screen, and I'm going to show that now. Okay, so let's start that first level again, and straight away all you've really got to do on this level is take this block here and drop it into this hole. So the blobs will move along. They're basically like the heads of people. I don't know why they've been done that way, but they are. They're not particularly cute either. They're just like, they look like some middle-aged bloke basically. So there you go, they've all got to the right hand side of the screen except one, which doesn't spawn till right at the end, and means that your time's ticking down, basically being wasted, because that time will add to your score at the end of the game, at the end of the level I should say. So he's just bouncing along slowly at the end to get to the end of the stage, and then eventually you get a blob bonus. That's 100 points for every head that's made it, and a time bonus as well. Any remaining time does somehow get added on to the next stage as well, I believe. So this stage is called Pink Pyjamas, and in this one they're actually blocked in, so you can't get any further to start with. So this gives you the chance to work along and work out what you need to do to complete the level, and you end up having to do that yourself on most levels, but it's a bit nicer to you on this one and gives you the chance to work out what blocks you need to sort out. So we're going to need a couple of these blocks here. The control cursor is a bit difficult to get to grips with. It's a bit of inertia when you move it along, which makes it quite hard to stop in the right place when you're under a bit of stress to get the thing completed. But there you go, that's everything now. So I'm just going to move that block there. These guys will make their way through, but what I'm also going to do is put a hole there for the one that lags behind. He's going to drop into that hole. So you can see they've made it quite comfortably over the stage there. They're going to get to the right hand side. They're all home now, and here's the last guy. I'm just going to drop down that hole because then I'll get the points for the time added on instead of having to wait for him, and I might need that time on later stages as well. So on to level 3, and this is where it starts to get a little bit harder, to say the least, because straight away you've got to block them off quite quickly to stop them all dying. So there you go, block them in. Now I can work out what I need to do with this level. So there's a killer block here. It's got a skull on it. It's not that easy to make out, but that's there, so we need to get rid of that. That 50 there, they'll just stop on that, and one of them will get 50 points when they go over it. So the other thing I need to do obviously is fill in some of these gaps here. So I still need some blocks from somewhere, and this is where you've got to grab them from elsewhere on the playing area. So grab a couple from over here. The cursor also moves slower the more blocks you're carrying, so that makes it a little bit more tricky as well. But there you go, I think that's a clear run now for them. They'll go over the top of that skull one, hopefully. Here we go, we'll soon find out. Away they go. There you go, one of them drops on the 50 and collects that 50 points, and the rest of them are very nicely making their way along towards the final bit of the level. So if you haven't worked it out yet, this resembles a very famous game in some respects in terms of the gameplay mechanics that was released 4 years later, and that's Lemmings. So yeah, this is basically a sort of rudimentary version of Lemmings. Obviously you haven't got the different skills for the blobs like you did with Lemmings, with, you know, as far as the digging and building towers and things like that, but effectively the aim of the game is exactly the same. You've got some stupid things that that you can't really control directly, and you've got to give them a way to get from one end of a stage to another, which is exactly what Lemmings was about. So whether the people that created Lemmings saw this idea and built on it, or whether it was just a fluke or a coincidence, we'll probably never know. But effectively this is an 8-bit version of Lemmings with a few problems which I'll get into in a minute, but this level's completed now. One thing you might have noticed me do was I put a block in underneath this 50 here, because the first one that hits that will knock it out, and then all the others would fall into a hole. And this is one of the problems with the game, is you've got a lot of hazards from this point onwards that you may not notice the first time you play. So add into the fact that you've also got a time limit to deal with, it's quite difficult. So now you get, after 4 stages, if you complete 4 stages, you get what's called a blob pen, and the idea is you've got to try and get the blobs to hit the right hand side, as many of them as possible, to get more blobs. But oh, they're all dying. Okay, so I lost them all. They all fell down a gap that I didn't notice. So that's the end of that. So on we go to level 4, which is called Yuck. Or is this level 5? I'm not sure. So something along here probably is going to make them drop out. There we go. So I've lost a few of them there. Still a few left. Oh, they're all going to go down that hole as well. And that'll be game over because I've run out of blobs. And that's the problem I was trying to illustrate, or describe I should say, is that it gets very difficult very quickly with you having to deal with various obstacles that are in the way, and not really, you know, it's very difficult to tell or to notice differences between a normal block and one that's going to either kill them or vanish when the first one hits it. So that's all makes it a little bit too difficult too quickly. It doesn't really introduce those concepts in a very user-friendly manner. It's very much trial and error, and you've seen me go through the first 4 stages quite comfortably, but that's only because I've played it quite a few times. So yeah, it has got some issues, to say the least. So what I'm going to do though is try and play that Yuck level again, which I can do, as you've seen, by moving up to that stage straight away. So I'm going to try and play that again, and maybe get to the next level, which is borderline impossible from my experience, and that'll probably be enough to have demonstrated most of what you do in the game. Okay, so let's give it another shot. I assume this is called Yuck because of the red background, by the way, which is certainly quite yuck. So I need to put something under that 50 there, and then I need to take this one out of the way as well, so that they can hop over there. And also this one. Lost a couple there, but some made it through, and there we go, some have got to the end. That wasn't too bad. Wasn't ideal, but it'll do for the demonstrating this particular level. And again, you get the one that's lagging behind, who's just eating up all your time. Well, you're better off just killing him off on the first level, to be honest, because once that one's been killed, the rest of them, then you never get one lagging behind from that point onwards. So there you go, got a few of them in, got some points, enough to demonstrate that level at least. And this is where it gets silly now, and it's called Quick. And the one thing that happens is they all spawn in this box, so they're not going to die straight away. But if you look at what you've got a handle here, you've got a death block there, a space there, a gap there with a death block next to it, more death blocks, another death block, a big gap here, a 50 there which they'll hit, and then any that made it that far afterwards would drop through, more spaces, more 50s. And you've got to get all the way to the end of here, and I just think that's absolutely impossible and really just unfair to put a level that difficult so early in the game. So I may as well try and get as much of it done as I can, but I mean straight away I've got a problem here with these death blocks, so I'm going to have to change that and put this, probably put this here, and then take this, no, that's going to have to go there. That's got to stay there. You can see I've only got 30 seconds left. There's just no chance I'm ever going to get this in a usable state before. Right, there's 3 blocks here that I don't need, so I could put one of those there. Yeah, I'm struggling already. That's going to need, yeah, I don't know. Let's just kick it off and see what happens. Let's take a couple of these. Oh, you're going to die straight away because I didn't fix that one. So there you go, that was game over. So yeah, I think that's just completely unfair to make it so difficult so quickly. I haven't actually played any of the later levels after that. So just out of interest, let's see what level 10 looks like. Okay, so I mean you can see problems straight away here. Yeah, they've all dropped down that hole, so I needed to fence them off and then work out how to get through that. It looks like there's more blocks to deal with than the one I just did, which was level 6, but even so, it's just a bit too frustrating, I think. It's a bit of a shame really, because obviously conceptually it's quite a good game. You know, it's original and reasonably interesting concept. Obviously Lemmings made a much better job of making it a fair game. One thing I didn't talk about at all, and I may as well do it while this demo is running, is the graphics. Pretty decent, I think. Nicely drawn sprites, if you like, for the heads. They're not particularly attractive, but they're nicely drawn. The blocks are colourful as well. There are some things where you can't tell one block from another, and the different coloured backgrounds don't really help, but overall they're not too bad. Sound in game, very minimal, just some bleeps and stuff like that. Oh, that's horrendous, look at that one. Like brown bricks on a light brown background, just horrible. So anyway, let's move on and do the review scores. So firstly, the packaging, pretty nice I think, not outstanding in any way, but certainly reasonably attractive on the front cover at least, and the instructions weren't too bad. So I'm going to give it 7 for the packaging. Presentation in game is very nice. Obviously the title screen and the music is all good. The fact that you've got a password system if you could get past level 14, and the ability to start on later levels up to level 14, and a high score table. Nice graphics on the title screen as well, all really good. So I'm going to give the presentation a 9 out of 10. Graphics in game are pretty good as well, not outstanding, I've just been talking about them so I won't go over it again. Basically pretty decent graphics that serve the purpose, 7 out of 10 for them. Sound in game is pretty non-existent, it's just some bleeps and things, but the music on the title screen is very good, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for the sound as well. And finally, playability, well as I've said, it's a great concept which was done a lot better with Lemmings 4 years later, making it sort of arcade style wherein you've got a high difficulty level, the fact that the blobs can die off pretty quickly, and you've got a time limit, so you haven't got the time to sort of plan it out particularly well before you've got to start moving the blocks around and making decisions. All makes it a little bit too difficult and quite frustrating, which is a shame as I've said, because the concept is certainly pretty decent and very original for the time. Overall though, because of the difficulty level, I'm going to give it a playability rating of 6. Just a little thing like giving you like a retry or a continue rather than having to go back and lose all your score would be quite nice I think, but it didn't have those things. So 6 out of 10 for the playability. That does give it an overall score of 7.7, so definitely one of the higher rated games. As for whether it's worth it, well this was a $2.99 game, and to be honest I'm not really sure why they added £1 onto the price for this, why they thought this was worth £1 more than most of the other Firebird games, I'm not sure. But that being said, it's a pretty decent game if you can hack the difficulty level, so I would say it's just about worth £2.99. As a $1.99 game I would have said definitely, $2.99 I'm not 100% sure. So there you go, that's my thoughts on Hyber Blob. Interesting game for sure, with some good features and some not so good. Let me know your thoughts about the game in the comments if you've played it. And that'll do for this video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.